It's one of the many new projects we've got coming to you on the VCU timeline, which we'll be sharing with you all today in exhaustive detail.
Hey, welcome back, ScreenCrush. I'm Ryan Airy, and these are all the Easter eggs, references, and little things you might have missed in The Boys Season 4, Episode 5. And oh my god, you guys, this episode had it all. What's going on with Hughie's dad is so heartbreaking, and Simon Pegg played it brilliantly. We also have flying super sheep that eat people, something that's hilarious yet terrifying at the same time.
Oh, like the Big Bang Theory.
Yeah, like the Big Bang Theory. And we finally got confirmation on what the hell is inside a Butcher, and we're going to explain how that connects to the Boys cartoon Diabolical, and how Butcher, Newman, and the boys may finally have what they need to bring down Homelander. And by the way, everybody, I want to thank all of you for buying our kick-ass new Laser Baby t-shirt at our merch store.
That was diabolical!
This is a parody of that scene with the baby from Nirvana, and we also have this Butcher as Punisher from Amazing Spider-Man 129, and Soldier Boy calling Hitler a disappointment, a parody of Captain America issue 1. Guys, when you shop our merch store, you not only support our channel, but you also support the consumerism that drives the American dream. Be an American. Buy our shit. So, in the previously on segment, we get at the start of the episode, we got a scene from Gen V showing how VP-elect Newman got her hands on the only sample of the Godolphin soup virus, and she killed the only guy who knows how to replicate it. Newman didn't want the virus to get into the wrong hands because it could kill her daughter, but she wants to keep it as an insurance policy against Homelander.
I think I can handle myself.
Oh, you mean that nasty little virus they're cooking up at Godolphin?
In this commercial, we see Bombsight and the Curse of Fu Manchu. Now, we couldn't find a character in the comics called Bombsight, so this might be an original character for this series. It's named after the bomb targeting system used in World War I. Now, Fu Manchu is a supervillain character who was created by author Sex Romer, also during World War I. Fu Manchu went on to appear in movies, TV shows, and comics, and inspired the Fu Manchu mustache. Now, Fu Manchu has a very troubling history of a racist stereotype that has haunted Asian Americans for generations. In fact, in the original Shang-Chi comics, Marvel actually owned the rights to Fu Manchu at this point, so Shang-Chi's father in the comics was Fu Manchu, but they very rightly changed that in the movie to Wen Wu. Here we can see a Budweiser poster with Liberty, Stormfront's former soup alias. And of course, we saw a clipping of this same ad back in Season 2. This poster has Crimson Countess from Season 3 in a 1967 anti-communism ad. Communism, of course, being all the rage of the 1960s. Many Americans were indeed scared of the Reds at this time. Now guys, I want to note, this show is super political, and we want to break down all of these political references that the creators of the show are making, as well as the messages that they are trying to convey. We understand that talking politics can be uncomfortable for some, but there's just no way to avoid it when it comes to this show. And hey, that's what's great about it. It makes you uncomfortable. That's kind of the point. The Boys has become a brilliant social commentary piece on our modern politics and the extreme divides in our country. Now, The Boys has always been a political show, but I was not prepared for how political and ripped from the headlines this season was going to be. The show's turned a mirror onto us and made us question our own assumptions about our own political system. And these days, it's pretty hard to even know who to believe anymore. It seems like every single news outlet has an agenda that they're just trying to sell, like Vought News does in The Boys. So, if you want to cut through the AI confirmation bias and get the real news, you should check out Ground News, our sponsor for this video. Guys, I use Ground News every day. I like it so much, I have my very own subscription.
Well, what is it?
Ground News is an app and website that gathers related articles from across the world into one place, but they give you the context about the source's political leaning, their reliability, and their ownership. This means that you can see through the bias and think critically about the news you consume. I mean, think about all the absolutely crazy history-making events happening right now, like when Putin and Kim Jong-un just signed a mutual defense pact. Left-leaning sources tended to focus on the words, help each other if attacked, while right-wing sources tended to use more neutral language, but they also invoked more comparisons to the Cold War. Right here, I can see who reported the story, which way they lean politically, the factuality, and whether or not the news came from independent ownership. The story had 200 total sources with 32 left, 34 right, and 57 center. Especially with the election coming up, I want to be informed, and I want to know that the news isn't trying to sway me one way or the other. They even have a blind spot section that shows you news stories that each side is ignoring. And by the way, this is all backed by ratings from 3 independent news monitoring organizations. This is an incredible resource, and I've been looking for a service like Ground News for years, so I highly encourage you to check them out. If you go to ground.news/ScreenCrush or click this QR code, you'll get 40% off their Vantage plan, which includes unlimited access to every feature. Or you can try their Pro plan for less than $1 a month, totally worth it. Your subscription will not only help out our channel, but you'll also be helping to support an independent platform working to make the media landscape more transparent. Now, back to The Boys. And here we have a commercial with Big Chief Apache saying, "Don't litter, chemo wasabi, with a tear running down his face. Now this is a parody of the Keep America Beautiful campaign featuring a Native American crying man watching litter on the side of the road. But you'll notice the Vought, of course, completely whitewashed the character. Now the name, Big Chief Apache, is also in reference to the character Apache Chief from Super Friends.
Tell me, Apache Chief, what is the animal that leaves this track?
And he was, of course, voiced by a white guy. We've got a poster for a black noir standalone movie titled This Means Noir.
A parody of the 2012 classic This Means War, starring Reese Witherspoon, Chris Pine, and Tom Hardy. Hilarious!
Sure, buddy. Now we've got another Crimson Countess movie called Whiskey Sunrise, parodying Dirty Dancing, and a poster for Red Thunder 2, a sequel to the first Red Thunder film that starred Soldier Boy.
Who do you think you are? God?
No. God would have mercy. I won't.
We've got a poster for Y2 Chaos starring former member of the Seven, Lamplighter. You'll see here that it came out in 1999. It was capitalizing on the hype of a new millennium, Y2K, and theories that all computers would stop working and the world would end. We've also got a Queen Maeve origin film, Rising Tide starring the Deep, and a translucent movie called Invisible Force 2, with the tagline, "You can't kill what you can't see," which of course was proven to be false in Season 1. And then we have the Dawn of the Seven poster, the movie we saw being made in Season 2.
Title card, Dawn of the Seven, cut to black.
Here we can see a trailer for The Seven, which we saw at the start of Season 3. Homelander is fighting Stormfront, and she is being played by Charlize Theron. Next, we see all of these Vought logos, Vought Studios, which looks identical to the Marvel Studios logo. We have Vought-a-Mundo, a parody of Telemundo, Vought News Network, which looks exactly like the Fox News Network, which is also a right-wing political commentary channel. Vought Plus, their streaming service, and we also have Vought TV, television for women. And this, of course, is a parody of the Lifetime Network.
Hey, I like Lifetime. They always rerun the Golden Girls. I am Rose, and you are Dorothy.
Thank you for being a friend.
Travel down the road and back again.
Okay, so we have American Hero, a parody of American Ninja Warrior, and we have Vought Soul, a parody of the Fox Soul channel, a channel targeted toward African Americans and Black Christian culture. We see another clip from the Dawn of the Seven movie from Season 3 where Homelander is fighting Charlize Theron's Stormfront. Now all of this is happening at the V52 Expo, a parody of Disney's D23. Homelander is offstage having flashbacks to his childhood in the lab. We also see the blood-covered walls of his old holding room from the previous episode. And mixed in with the flashes of his childhood, we see Ryan looking scared. Now, as we discussed last week, Homelander was raised in this lab, and essentially he was tortured for all of his life, both physically and mentally. Vought later realized that their methods for raising Homelander were flawed because he could never be their Superman if he was so emotionally broken and unstable. The idea behind Ryan's raising was that he would have a mother and not grow up in fear, and he would have a happy life. Homelander now realizes that everything wrong with him emotionally is a byproduct of fear and manipulation. He realizes now that he won't get through to Ryan by scaring him or trying to control him, and that's why we see in this episode Homelander takes a more laid-back approach, giving Ryan more free reign. Homelander sees Ryan not only as his son, but as who he wishes he had been. Homelander wishes that he had a mother and a father who loved him. He wishes that he hadn't been kept in a cage and tortured. He wishes his mind hadn't been manipulated to seek approval and be obedient. So now he's doing the polar opposite direction of his childhood and giving Ryan the upbringing that he wished that he had. This is once again showing us how immature Homelander is. Despite him coming to terms with some of his issues and becoming a more competent villain, he's still in so many ways a child. Up on stage, we get the announcement of the VCU timeline, phases 7 through 19, a clear parody of the Marvel Cinematic Universe and their multi-year plans and phases of films that we would see at an event like D23. On the screen, we can see Training A Train, one of those proper noun gerund movie titles like Finding Forrester or Finding Nemo, and Firecrackers Lord Soldier, which we get a trailer for a little bit later. We also see The Deep, Secrets of Atlantis, which has to be a parody of the newest Aquaman movie, Lost Kingdom, a Homelander movie, The Seven Reborn, which is a sequel to Dawn of the Seven, a Tech Knight movie, more on him in just a bit, and a Super School movie. That's the movie they're pitching to Ryan later in the episode. And guys, that is just phase 7. Here, and here, we can see G-Men movies. That's a group founded by John Godolkin and are a parody of the X-Men. In the boys' comics, the G-Men are a team of oppressed supes, just like Marvel's mutants, and they too are based in an upstate New York mansion like the X-Men. We've got G2, like X2, and G-Men, Days Past from the Future, a clear dig at X-Men Days of Future Past. Alongside the lineup, we can also see The Deep, Gods and Dolphins, a parody of James Gunn's first phase of DCU films, Gods and Monsters. Back at the hospital with Hughie's dad, who is now awake from his coma thanks to the Compound V, we hear him talking about how the last thing he remembers was buying a family pack of pizza rolls, a callback to this scene from Season 1.
How much I f***ing hate pizza rolls.
Now, you love pizza rolls.
When I was 7!
And also in the past, Hughie has talked about his dad as somebody who would always bring him pizza rolls, which he thought was a weakness, but later saw as a major character trait for him.
Just sat there
eating pizza rolls.
He wasn't weak. I didn't know what strength was.
Hughie refers to his recovery as a true blue miracle, a reference to this Christmas song from Sesame Street.
And if that isn't a true blue miracle, I don't know what one is.
But this is also an eerie reference to Compound V being blue, but as we'll soon discover, it is no miracle. So Firecracker has declared war on Starlighters and refers to this situation as biblical.
This is a biblical war.
Now this is a common talking point you'll find on the far right, insisting that a new civil war of sorts is coming between the right and the left. And this is of course once again showing Firecracker's hypocritical nature. She goes on and on about how Starlighters are violent while she's the one responsible for the vandalism on Starlight House. Firecracker also says,
Guess Starlight can't decide whether to rape a baby or kill it.
Showing that despite being outed as a pedophile herself in the previous episode, she is still sticking with the everybody I hate is a pedophile talking point. MM and Monique are having a conversation with Janine regarding her acting out in school. Janine says,
He said Homelander's a hero, so I told him the truth.
Leading Monique to say to MM that she's not going to lose anyone else to this superhero stuff. Now this is a reference not only to how she lost Todd to the alt-right home teamer rabbit hole, but also to the fact that this is why her and MM are no longer together. Back in season 1, Monique tells MM that she never wants to see him again after he put their family in danger and lied to her about rejoining the boys. So Monique is understandably terrified that she's going to lose her daughter to this same chaos that she lost her husband and her late boyfriend to. Here, Butcher refers to Kimiko as a weapon, a callback to this scene in season 3.
That is exactly what you are.
Here we can also see Kimiko carving on her work desk just like in season 3 when MM returned to the boys.
What is Kimiko doing? Are you kidding me?
In Frenchie's desk drawer we can see him pick up this rosary, reminding us of his guilt and foreshadowing his need to repent, which he does later in the episode by turning himself in.
When we
I've committed murders, plural.
So the boys have a plan to get former Vought CEO Stan Edgar out of prison so that they can use him to find where Newman is keeping the virus. Remember that Stan Edgar was betrayed by his adoptive daughter, Newman, last season when she was supposed to announce an investigation into Homelander, but instead ratted out her own father.
Homelander has bravely come forward as a whistleblower and provided evidence of crimes committed within Vought by CEO Stan Edgar.
The boys use Newman's daughter Zoe to convince Edgar to help them.
How about we get you out of here? Exonerated. And throw in custody of Zoe.
Now you'll remember from season 3 that Edgar has a close connection with Zoe.
You want me to read it again?
Actually too old for that.
Oh, you smartass.
Butcher says,
Got to hand it to him. Cunt knows how to wear a whistle.
and I took this as a reference to Breaking Bad, where this same actor, Giancarlo Esposito, plays Gustavo Fring and is always dressed to the nines. Back at the hospital, we see Hughie's mom and dad talking and laughing, and we can see this look of joy on Hughie's face. He has held so much resentment toward his mother for all these years, and rightfully so. And for a moment, we see this look of innocence in Hughie that we haven't really seen since season 1. They mentioned their cat Jar Jar, named after Jar Jar Binks, which is absolutely hilarious, considering how Simon Pegg despises that character and the Star Wars prequels.
No, that kid wanted a Jar Jar doll. Kids like Jar Jar. Why?
When Hughie brings up his dad giving his mom power of attorney, Hugh says,
Did you think I couldn't handle it?
It's not that. You hold on tight to everyone.
a callback to this scene from season 1 when Hughie wanted to go after Vought legally and his dad said that he didn't have it in him.
You can't do this. Why not, Dad? You don't have the fight. You never have.
This reminds us that Hugh doesn't really know how much his son has changed, and just last week we were reminded just how strong-willed Hughie is. He took down that terrorist in hand-to-hand combat, but what showed even more strength was Hughie's decision to not give his dad the Compound V and to let him die peacefully, which by the way we got wrong last week, sorry about that. And then at the end of the episode, Hughie shows that he has the strength to do the hard thing and to euthanize his own father.
I don't want to be Jar Jar.
Back with the boys, we see Newman's secret lab at one of Edgar's estates. They've been testing on animals, something that we've seen in previous seasons. And oh my god, I love this scene where all of their noses started bleeding and in walks Newman. We of course have seen Newman's victims get nosebleeds before having their heads popped off, but seeing her have such control over her power and to be able to threaten all of them with a mere nosebleed was badass. But you'll notice that she didn't make Stan's nose bleed, reminding us that despite her frustration, she still loves her father. And this is foreshadowing how she'll save him later in the episode. And guys, I really loved what they're foreshadowing here with this unlikely team up. I think that come the end of this series, or maybe even this season, we are going to see the line drawn between Homelander and the boys, and sides will be chosen. And I think Newman will definitely be on the side of the boys in their takedown of Homelander. In this trailer for Training A-Train, we can see what looks like footage from the season 1 race when A-Train had his big race against Shockwave. Cameron Cole says,
I gotta
take a couple of shots at the home team now and again if I'm going to appear fair and balanced.
A reference to the Fox News slogan, fair and balanced. A-Train says,
which just finished reshooting its reshoots, making it the most expensive TV show ever.
Of course, a reference to the new industry standard popularized by Marvel Studios, where reshoots have become so common that they are part of the shooting schedule. Reshoots used to be a sign that a movie was going to be really bad, but now they're just part of the standard production process for big budget films. Now, this episode has a theme of showing Vought's insensitivity and exploitation toward African Americans, such as when Homelander says,
"It's like being a slave, only worse."
And we're seeing this amplified with Vought's new Black Addict movie. In season 2, we saw Vought do the same thing with the Girls Get It Done slogan.
Girls get it done.
This reminds us that Vought isn't merely a parody of the right wing, but also a parody of out-of-touch corporations in general. We see massive corporations constantly try to appeal to everyone, which on its surface doesn't sound like a bad thing, but what we're seeing here is a clear example of how mega corporations like Vought have no true ideology. They just care about making as much money as possible. We also see how out-of-touch these corporations can be with their attempts to, quite frankly, just come off racist. Cameron Cole refers to them as articulate, which is a hugely racist remark disguised as a compliment. Really, a backhanded compliment that for years has been used to imply that most black people aren't well-spoken. And when Vought shows their custom race-baiting advertising feature with black stereotypes, you can see that some black members of the audience are not amused. And when the Deep says,
"We say go woke, get yoked,"
this once again reminds us that these idiots have no true political affiliation. They just say whatever they think they need to stay in power and rake in the money. Here we see Adam Bork, director of Dawn of the Seven and Saving A-Train.
The fans spoke with those release the Bork cut hashtags.
And as he's pitching Super School to Ryan, we see him harassing this young woman in the workplace. Another common thing you'll see happen at these mega corporations. We hear Bork say,
"Is this because I jerked it in front of Mika Kelly? Because again, that was just crossed wires."
A reference to a few of the disgusting horror stories that have come out in recent years. And the name Mika Kelly is a reference to Megyn Kelly, who was sexually harassed by Roger Ailes at Fox News. Back with the boys, we hear Butcher say,
"Before she knows what's what, I'll jab her with a dose."
And that kind of made me raise an eyebrow because how is he going to do that? She is bulletproof.
How is it you guys are actually getting worse at your jobs?
I loved this line from Sage to Firecracker where she calls her out on playing victim.
Now you don't have to play a victim. You can really be one.
Firecracker is the perfect example of the type of voice on the political right who often call people victims in order to mock them, while simultaneously complaining about the most mundane and usually made-up nonsense, showing that they want nothing more than to play the victim. Like really, was anybody harmed by an M&M getting different shoes? So last week we talked about what's living inside a butcher, and we referenced a canon episode of the cartoon Diabolical, where we saw a husband use Compound V to try to cure his wife of cancer. But that cancer mutates into a souped-up sentient being of its own. And we've got a great video on the channel right now going into even more detail about that episode. Now, the creature we saw in Diabolical had tendrils very similar to what we were seeing come out of this dead, souped-up rabbit. Butcher is getting closer and closer to discovering what's living inside of him. This creature inside of Butcher is essentially his new superpower given to him by the Compound V. But the creature has a consciousness of its own that is manipulating Butcher, very similar to the symbionts in the Marvel Universe like Venom.
Cooperate, and you might just survive.
Back at the presentation, we see Tech Knight from Gen V talk about how it's been a whole year since his last movie, so it's time for a reboot. So this is a commentary on the reboot trend in modern Hollywood, especially among superheroes like Spider-Man, Superman, and Batman. But frankly, the trend started in the late 70s with Star Trek the Motion Picture. We even got a reference to the Batman with this reference to Nirvana and a 12-minute pitch black sequence.
With its soundtrack of Nirvana hits, and a 12-minute sequence that's entirely pitch black.
So Hughie's dad has powers now as a result of the Compound V, but while his brain may be awake, it's still greatly damaged from the stroke.
Hey, I've got to take Hughie to the Vought company store. He's saving up for a Tech Knight doll.
He has the power to phase through objects, giving him the ability to walk through walls. And you'll notice that he seems to shake really fast, just like we saw Barry Allen do in The Flash. We see Hugh run right through someone's body, just like A-Train did to Hughie's girlfriend Robin way back in season 1. Remember, Hughie got this Compound V from A-Train, so in many ways, his dad doing this to people is the series coming full circle. And as we said earlier, Simon Pegg is so good in this episode. Colton, is there something you want to say about Pegg's performance?
Yeah, man, I just wanted to take a second to say how
absolutely brilliant Peg is as an actor. You know, his name isn't one that typically comes to mind when you're thinking of like world-class actors, but damn, was he not phenomenal in this episode. In season 1, you know, he broke out of his typical comedic type role and he took on the persona of like a bit of a hard ass, and I really enjoyed him in that season, but he really dialed it to 11 here. The sheer emotion that he's expressing, mixing fear, anger, confusion, and you know, even some comedy. This performance served, I think, brilliantly as a parallel to what we're seeing happening with Hughie and really all of the other characters in this show. These are strong, powerful, some super powerful individuals who have looked danger in the eye multiple times and, you know, told it to go f itself. But as this episode showed us with Hughie and his dad, as well as with the gang hiding from the flying sheep, they're all scared, and that's what this episode depicted brilliantly. All of these characters, including Homelander, they are terrified of what's to come. And then we got this great line in Hugh's final moments where he says,
Tom Hanks.
Heavy spoilers probably hates Tom Hanks. Probably so. Okay, so we know that Hughie used to be a big fan of superheroes and Tech Knight was his favorite.
I'm sorry. I've got to take Hughie to the Vought company store. He's saving up for a Tech Knight doll.
I think we're totally going to see Tech Knight and Hughie eventually meet, and I'm curious how Hughie will react around a guy who used to be his favorite soup. Back at the expo, we see Sam and Kate introduced as the Guardians of Godolkin. But of course, we know these two aren't the real Guardians of Godolkin that saved the day in Gen V. These two were actually the bad guys. In the Gen V finale, the real Guardians were framed for the Godolkin massacre, and Homelander helped spin the story to make Sam and Kate out to be the heroes. So all season, and really ever since season 2, we've watched Ryan be pulled between Homelander and Butcher. Pulled between his soup side and his human side. Ryan wants to help people. He tells his dad as much here.
I kind of want to help people.
But now Homelander is getting more clever about manipulating his son by pretending he's giving him freedom. I mean, we have to remember that while Ryan is a good kid, he's still a kid. He's very emotional and very impressionable. So Homelander can still easily manipulate him into becoming a bad guy if he takes the right approach. And what's ironic about this is that Homelander decided to take the approach of letting Ryan do whatever he wants after last week's episode when he was reminded of how controlled he was as a boy. That lab confined him to a small room and even used psychologists to break his mind so that he would be obedient. Homelander is now doing the same thing with his manipulation of Ryan. Even though he's disguising it as freedom, he's really just taking advantage of his young and impressionable mind to turn him into what he wants him to be, just like Vought did with him.
Your need for approval and for love? Vought brought in the best psychologists in the world.
Next, we get this conversation on a belief in God between Frenchie and Starlight.
Do you still believe in God?
I want to.
Now this is calling back to earlier in the episode with Frenchie feeling the need to repent, but it's also reminding us of how much Starlight has changed. Back in season 1, she was a poster girl for this conservative evangelical movement, and now she's a liberal icon. And you'll notice, by the way, that Samir is played by none other than Omid Abtahi, the actor who plays Dr. Pershing in The Mandalorian. So this mention of a V'd-up hamster...
We gave V to a hamster so we could test the virus on it. Oh, a V'd-up hamster was your first mistake, mon ami.
...is a callback to this scene from season 1.
Daughter went through 3 of them.
Now, I love this line.
You really don't care who you just throw to the wolves?
No, not really.
It's funny because these are sheep and it parallels the wolves in sheep's clothing idiom. And that idiom could also be applied to several characters in The Boys and how they may appear one way, but they're actually the other. Such as Cynthia Newman having been an antagonist, but now she seems to be on the path to joining the fight against Homelander. The same is true for A-Train, as we discussed earlier. And then there's Butcher, who's been a hero of this show since the pilot, but who may now be on the path to becoming a villain. We have a great video up on the channel right now discussing that very possibility, so be sure to check it out. So we've known for a while now that MM suffers from severe OCD and anxiety, and if you struggle with as well, then you know that hives can be a side effect. And I've always really liked how they used a big, strong, put-together guy like MM to showcase that anyone can suffer from these types of ailments, and I appreciate that the show is giving these conditions some attention. Here we see Sage showing Tech Knight something written in what looks like a Queen Maeve themed diary. I'd actually love to hear your guys' theories on what she's showing him down in the the comments below. Homelander gives his speech about needing these soups to become wrathful gods, and then he refers to them as patriots. Another example of how, in the real world, those on the far right consider themselves patriots and justify political violence like what transpired on January 6th, and they call this type of violence patriotic. And the episode ends on Butcher with a pretty deranged looking smile after having captured Samir and cut off his leg, showing us once again that he is not himself, and that whatever is inside of him is making him reckless and cruel. So guys, those are all the Easter eggs that we caught in this week's episode of The Boys. Big shout out to the writer of this video, Colton Ogburn. You can find his social links below. And if there's anything that we missed, let us know down in the comments or at me on Twitter. And if it's your first time here, please subscribe, smash that bell for alerts. For ScreenCrush, I'm Ryan Airy.